All right, guys, today in front of me, we have the first edition Hemingway Rye whiskey from the legendary Call family library. Now, the Call family dates back over 230 years and 8 generations. They put out some legendary whiskeys in that time. Is this Hemingway Rye whiskey a legendary whiskey? Let's find out. All right, guys, so here's a few details about this first edition Hemingway Rye whiskey. This is a blend of 4- and 9-year-old rye whiskeys that are finished in rum-seasoned Oloroso sherry casks. It is a 94% of a 9-year Indiana rye, and then 6% of a 4-year Kentucky rye whiskey. Again, made by Ron, Jacob, and Clayton Call from the Call family library. This one comes in at 100 proof. Let's get the nose. I absolutely love the nose on this. Not only do you get a lot of that rye spice, that rye influence on the nose, but it gives you this, there's a lot of like red berries and blueberries, like blackberries on the nose. Just very, very rich and dense aromas on here. The further you go into it, it's literally like a caramel-coated berry mixture. Further away, I feel like you get more of that rye aroma. So the good thing is that the finishing didn't overtake the rest of the aromas that this beautiful whiskey had to offer. But yeah, a lot of like rich red fruit, just kind of like soaked in caramel. It gives me this like almost like, again, those rum vibes give you some of that like brown sugar too, but it's really, it gives me some kind of like a tropical note there as well further into the glass with some of that that like caramel coated berries. Beautiful nose on this one though. Let's get into palate, guys. Cheers. So one of the things I'll say about this, with it being 100% rye, you're not getting a big burst of that rye spice there across the palate. You know, there is a rye influence to it, but it's a little more muted than what you would typically get off a big spicy kind of rye whiskey. But then as you get to the back of the palate, it really starts to kind of coat itself and saturate itself in to the palate there, and then that's when some of those berries really start to like make themselves like present there. More of a strawberry and like a raspberry there a little bit. Not so much like the blueberry, kind of blackberry. None of that like none of that tart berryness. It's way more sweet. Very nice finish on this one. It kind of flows through with like some brown sugar, some white pepper that kind of flow through into the finish with a little bit of those berries kind of intertwined in there. I didn't get a lot on the front of the palate. Like I said, that, you know, there's a little bit of that rye influence there across the middle of the palate. It wasn't that big burst of spice or anything, but towards the back of the palate is really kind of where that flavor kind of shined through and into the finish. Let's get a second sip. So the front of the palate now started to open up to more like traditional rye kind of flavors. You do get a little bit of that like that influence of the Oloroso there. Some of that berry starts to appear there on the front of the palate. It is very sweet, but it's like a honey / lemon kind of flavor there on the front of the palate. And then as it transitions to like the middle of the palate, that's kind of when like that little burst of rye, you know, makes its appearance. And it's not spicy. It's just kind of, you get that little like tingle across the middle of the palate, kind of lets you know that there's some rye in there, but not super spicy by any means. And then as it goes into the back is really where the flavors start to kind of burst and saturate themselves onto the cheeks and then the soft palate. And it's more, again, there's more of that berry influence. The berries kind of skip over the middle of the palate, but then they start to transition there onto the back of the palate. And they start to get a little darker with each sip. Like they're a little more pronounced with each sip that you take. And there's more brown sugar there that starts to appear. So it does get very sweet. Again, there's not a lot of like tart like from the berries on there. It's very, very sweet on the back. And that white pepper gives it kind of a nice mixture and allows some of that spice to kind of flow through consistently with that like that rye spice too. But yeah, I mean, that was quite the surprise. It's like a honey kind of lemon there on the front of the palate, which was surprising because I didn't get that at all on the very first sip. But then again, middle of the palate and back of the palate is really where I feel the flavors are more pronounced and in your face. It's nice though because the rye still shines through, right? With this being a finished whiskey, sometimes whiskeys can be overdone. They can be, they can become almost too much. And in this case, I think it's very well balanced. It offers sweetness, it offers some spice, and then actually a really nice finish to kind of flow through. Let's get the last sip, guys. Cheers. So that third sip kind of did it for me. It really kind of connected all 3 points there on the palate, the front, the mid, the back, as well as the kind of finish, the flow through. But more and more, the more I sip on this, the more kind of, again, those pronounced, like those flavors are just there. You really start to recognize them with every sip. And again, it's like a honey kind of lemon mixture there on the front, and then as it goes to the middle, some of that rye is still present there across the center of the palate. Get a little bit of that tingling, and then it transitions into this like brown sugared red berries, some white pepper that kind of flow through and pull into the finish. And it's nice because it's not overdone. This was not finished for too long because you're still able to pull out a lot of those really nice rye characteristics from this. Either way, a hell of a job here by Hemingway. So I want to thank you guys for tuning into this episode of Dusty Dan's Whiskey Reviews. I'm going to give a big shout out to the team over at Hemingway for supplying me with this bottle here to review on the channel. Guys, great finished rye whiskey here. Again, this did very well in the Ascot Awards. It did win a medal, which was well deserved. I think it is a very well balanced rye whiskey. I think the blending portion of it, I think they did an outstanding job with the blending. And then again, not finishing it for too long to where you're losing a lot of that foundation of that rye flavor, and it being overtaken by whatever finishing it may be. But in this case, I think they finish it for the right period of time. You do get a lot of that kind of red berry influence on the palate, as well as some of that those tropical vibes. Again, I think with this rye, this would be a great introduction rye whiskey to someone who was looking to try a finished rye whiskey. Again, it's not super high proof. Again, it's very well balanced with sweet and spice, and I think it offers a really nice kind of flavor profile for someone who's looking to get into rye, like a finished rye whiskey. Again, hell of a job here by Hemingway, and again, congratulations on the medal at the Ascot Awards. Guys, if you're looking for more reviews like this, hit that subscribe button, bell notification to be alerted of any upcoming reviews or live streams. Just find me on Instagram at Dusty Dan's Whiskey Reviews. Till next time, guys, stay dusty.